I recently read Dune for the first time, and even though I read it for the first time, I actually knew quite a lot about it because it's such a popular book, and you should totally read it if you like sci-fi and or fantasy. But I still wanted to try to help some of you out there who might be thinking about picking this up before the movie adaptation coming out this year. If you don't know what Dune is about, it's the story of Paul Atreides, heir to House Atreides, tasked with ruling an inhospitable planet called Arrakis, which is also known as Dune. Arrakis is a desert planet with giant sandworms. Water is extremely valuable, and it's also a planet where a substance called spice grows. Spice is sort of a drug that extends life and enhances consciousness. It makes interstellar travel possible in the way that the navigators need to take spice to be able to see the paths through space-time. The native inhabitants of the planet are called the Fremen, and the current ruling house on the planet is House Harkonnen. So Dune takes place in our universe, but 20,000 years into the future. There's an empire ruling the galaxy, and also there are noble houses of power. So when House Atreides is tasked with taking over Arrakis, this causes a strong tension between them and House Harkonnen. After a certain very famous betrayal that you might have heard of, the story follows Paul following his destiny to become this legendary leader that people expect him to be and take revenge. My background in Dune is interesting. So when I was a kid, I loved real-time strategy games. And a lot of people favorite RTS as Warcraft or StarCraft or the Age of Empires, but my favorite was a game called Dune 2. Later they made a remake of that game called Dune 2000 with cinematic cutscenes and everything. I loved that game. I would play as House Harkonnen. I did not like House Atreides at all, but I learned a lot about the story and the world from that game. So I've been familiar with the politics and the world building of Dune for years. But here's the first expectation I had that most of you will probably not have. In the games, the most intriguing house for me was a house called House Ordos. House Ordos was sort of advanced in biotech, and they shared a hive mind. They had super interesting weapons, and their power structure was totally intriguing. Not gonna lie, I was most excited to read about House Ordos in this book. If you're one of the 3 people like me, I'm sad to say that House Ordos is not in the book at all. What? Yes, it was created solely for the game. I looked it up because I couldn't believe it, and apparently it's not in the future books either. I am shook. That was the most shocking thing for me that none of you probably cares about, but I wanted to get it out of my system. So now we can start with the actual list. The first misconception I had about this book from what I heard about it was the language and the writing style. I thought it would be super heavy with confusing words, but I was surprised to find out that it's actually not like that at all. I didn't find the writing super flowery and difficult to follow. This was published almost 60 years ago, so the writing style is a bit dated, but it's not confusing to read. We might want to talk a bit about the writing style because this is told by an omniscient narrator, so you are inside every character's head. Every now and then there are parts in italics and you are in someone's thoughts. That might get confusing occasionally. That style is no longer really used in fiction. It also puts some distance between the reader and the characters because it feels like you are always hovering above rather than living the moment with the character. I did not think it was as big of a deal as everyone makes it sound like it is. It is just a bunch of thoughts in italics, guys. It's really fine. I don't really like that kind of storytelling, so I thought I'd get annoyed by it, but I didn't. There's one major moment, the betrayal moment. Now, first of all, we can criticize anything to no end. We can find things to improve in any book. And that particular moment could have been handled better for sure. But it's clearly not intended as a mystery. You as a reader know who's going to betray who. So there's no mystery intended by the author. The intention is clearly to see that the person who betrays has a reason and is conflicted about it, but they have to do it. You get to see their point of view of why they think they must do this. The main thing I thought could have been better about that moment is that everyone suspects everyone else except for this one person. The most loyal people are seen as suspect, but not this person. So I was a bit annoyed that everyone was so behind the whole thing and never even considered it properly. But that's pretty much it. I don't think the fact that we know who's going to do what takes away from the intended effect of the moment, because the story is mostly about the politics and how and why people make the decisions they make. Which brings us to the first reality about this book, and that is it's heavy on politics. However, the way politics works is very complex. It's very rare to find a book with this complex of a political structure. One thing that makes politics very interesting and easy to follow is that politics strongly depend on the economy. So the spice plays a huge role in people's political motivations because it's a rare substance. But for the natives of the planet, the most important substance is water. So their lives and tradition heavily revolve around water. Everything just makes sense. It's not like, oh, I'm so ambitious, I want power kind of thing. I thought it was really well done. And here's the thing, which brings us to the next misconception I had about this book, because it's really complex. I thought there would be some hard to follow, convoluted world building in this book, but it's actually really easy to follow because it's based on our own political structure. So it's easy to understand where things come from and how they tie into each other. This is also what I got right, because I did expect a lot of world building from this book, and boy, does it deliver. It's an extremely detailed world. The bad guys are a bit too simplistic, mustache twirling bad guys. So that's not super exciting. I'm guessing maybe it gets better in the future books. Especially having a bad guy to be fat and gay is just something that didn't age well, because it is done in a way to make him look more obnoxious, I guess. But it is the product of a different time, so I gave it a pass. Another misconception I had was to make all this complex world building work. I thought there would be pages and pages of descriptions, but strangely enough, this book is mostly written in dialogue. I love stories told through dialogue because it gives you a lot of character. And since this book is written through an omniscient narrator, it really helps to have a lot of dialogue in it. Then you can experience the characters as what they say and how they interact. I do see people saying there are a lot of descriptions and whatever, but I have no idea why they say that. I absolutely loved that aspect of this book. And if you also love stories told through dialogue, you'll probably be happy with this. It might lend itself to a decent film adaptation. I had actually seen the David Lynch movie many years ago. I don't really remember it. I remember it as being really bad, but hopefully this new adaptation will be good. However, even though there is so much dialogue, I would still say character relationships are on the weaker side. There aren't a lot of bonding moments between the characters where they become vulnerable. It's mostly characters having conflict and discussing strategy, etc. So I would have appreciated more moments where characters would just spend time with each other as people instead of as people representing a position. Another thing I didn't expect was I didn't think there would be so much mysticism. This book is sci-fi with heavy mysticism. I did expect there would be a lot of philosophy, and that ended up being true. I overall really enjoyed this book. I thought the writing style would be really dated. It would be hard to follow, but it wasn't. There is a lot to discuss about it, good and bad. Maybe I'll make a separate discussion video for it, but I totally recommend you read it. I'm not sure if I'll read the next books in the series. I know a bit about where the story goes, but I hear conflicting things about it. Let me know what you think in the comments if you read the rest of the books. Anyway, that's it for this one. I hope it was helpful for you. If it was, please leave a like to let me know. And if you'd like to see more book reviews, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
Goose breeze. Goose breeze. Scent. Lilac. Lilac. Goose. 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 Goose breeze. Lilac. Goose. 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 Goose breeze. Lilac. Scent. Goose breeze. Lilac. Lilac. Goose.